Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. The Phils take down the Rays last night, and we had some fireworks, not just with homers. Benches clearing, call-ups making moments. It was a busy night at the bank last night. We'll break it all down on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me for some of my other work, Sports Talk Radio in Philadelphia. I've been over at 97.5 The Fanatic for 5 years now, talking on the air. I've been 3 years a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member, and I'm also in my third season as your host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. All that really helps us out on Locked On Phillies and get you notifications when new episodes are posted. I appreciate everyone who's done that, everyone who's going to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Go ahead and check out GameTime if you need tickets to any major events. Real quick, before we get into the episode and talk Philadelphia Phillies baseball, today is a very solemn day in United States history. It is September 11th. I do just want to take a second out to say that we'll always remember the tragedy of that day, the people affected, thinking of, praying for people who are still here and the people that we lost. And it's just a solemn day that we will never forget. Thoughts and prayers out to everybody affected by the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. It is, again, a solemn day, but we have work still to do. And with that in mind, we will continue with the podcast as per usual. The Philadelphia Phillies found another win last night. They took down the Tampa Bay Rays. It was a 9-4 victory, and it was not as wide of a margin of victory as that final score would suggest. The Phillies and the Rays were tight in this one. The Phils went up 4-2, and then the Rays come back and tie it at 4, and then the eighth inning was where everything really popped off. A lot of stuff going down in this one. There's plenty of stuff we're going to get into. It's going to take more than one segment to even discuss everything that happened in last night's game, but let me first, I got to give some love to the folks that really put together the winning effort for the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I know Trey Turner had 2 home runs. We'll talk about it. I know Kyle Schwarber set a record and then left with injury. We'll talk about it. But I want to give some love to Cal Stevenson and Buddy Kennedy, because in that 8th inning, with the score tied at 4, Cal Stevenson comes to the plate as a pinch hitter, and he ropes a double, a 2 RBI double, a big spot for him. And to see him come through, a guy that you didn't expect to be a part of this team this year, didn't expect to be a big contributor, and not that he's been a huge contributor over the course of the season, but that was a big contribution last night, a huge at bat. And then Buddy Kennedy, who worked a walk 2 nights ago to set up the walk-off by Cody Clemens while hearing chants, Buddy, from the home crowd, the team he grew up across the river from, the local kid. Well, he gets another chance last night, and he has an RBI single scoring Cal Stevenson. Buddy Kennedy, a big moment. Like, if you had told me that Cal Stevenson and Buddy Kennedy were having the big hits of the night in a game in September for the Philadelphia Phillies, like, if you told me that a couple of months ago, I would have said, man, well, this season's in the toilet. Everybody's hurt, or this team has had something go terribly wrong. And while there are a lot of injuries right now, I mean, it showcases the depth of this organization, this team, the Philadelphia Phillies in general, and what they've done to call up guys, and what those guys that they've called up, from Cody Clemens to Buddy Kennedy to Cal Stevenson to Weston Wilson to the myriad of pitchers, Tyler Phillips, guys that you've brought up to this major league roster that have had major impacts, or impacts even in a single game in this season. That is how you find a way to the best record in baseball, which, by the way, the Phillies, once again, after last night's win, now have the best record in baseball. Again, clearly outright, a full game over the Dodgers, technically 2, because they have the tiebreaker over Los Angeles due to the season series victory by the Phillies. Let's get into the rest of the game, though. I wanted to give those guys their love because they're the unsung heroes of baseball teams every year that find a way to be some of the best teams. Those guys you don't think about, that's what the best teams have. That's what the Philadelphia Phillies have this year. Shout out to those guys. Let's talk a little Kyle Schwarber now, shall we? He started off the game with a bomb, because of course he did. Bottom of the first inning, first at bat of the game for the Philadelphia Phillies, and Kyle Schwarber sends one not quite as deep as the one he hit 2 nights ago, but same exact trajectory, same exact angle of the ballpark, right center and long gone. And it sets the MLB record for most home runs to lead off a team's game, so most leadoff home runs in a single MLB season. He breaks the tie with Alfonso Soriano. The former record was 13. Now, Kyle Schwarber of the Philadelphia Phillies stands alone as the most prolific power-hitting leadoff hitter season in the history of the sport. And for all of those folks that argued till they were blue in the face about whether or not Kyle Schwarber should be the leadoff hitter, he can't do it. They can't have him here. Move him down. Move somebody else up. Come on, folks. Can we agree now? Kyle Schwarber's the leadoff hitter of this team. Not that it's been a huge narrative this year because he's been very, very good at the plate, but a huge moment for Kyle Schwarber. Then he goes out of the game with a left elbow contusion, sliding back into first base on a pickoff attempt later on. It sucks because you've already got JT out, Alec Boehm out, Edmundo Sosa out, Austin Hayes out. We've run through the list this week of injuries. Kyle Schwarber now had to exit the game. What Rob Thompson said after was encouraging, though. He said, Schwarber's day-to-day right now. I'm putting him in the lineup tomorrow. And if we have to scratch him, we will. But he's assuming that Schwarber's going to be ready to go. I don't know if he will play or not. Rob Thompson doesn't either. But the fact that he's approaching things that way says, okay, nothing major, just something. He felt some discomfort. They said, get out of the game. We can't lose more guys. We feel like we're in an okay spot in this one, or we'll survive this one without you. And then you move on to game 3. And if he can play, great. Now, some people are having the same discussion we had with Bryce Harper about a week ago, where it's when he got hit in the elbow in a bat. It was like, give him a couple days off. And then he was back relatively soon. So if the guy's ready, let him play. If he's got a little discomfort, sit Kyle Schwarber a day. It's going to be a tough one to win if you do that. But listen, you got to make sure he's ready to go. He's been red hot lately. He's a huge part of this team. He cannot be injured for the postseason. Be as cautious with Kyle Schwarber as you need to be. Who else should we talk about? Because there's a lot of things to get into. Trey Turner? Hell yeah. Let's talk about Trey Turner. 2 bombs in this game. You absolutely love to see it from Trey. If his power comes back, do you know how much of a game changer that would be for the Philadelphia Phillies in the postseason? Like, could you imagine? Like, Bryce Harper isn't even hitting the ball out of the yard. We'll talk about him in a second right now. But if Trey Turner gets his power back and Kyle Schwarber keeps doing this and JT gets healthy and all these guys start to figure it out, oh my goodness. It reminds you of just how good this lineup can be and why they currently have the most wins in baseball, because of the work they put in the first half of the season. Trey Turner, little pop, music to my ears. That was a great thing to see. He had himself a great game. Bryce Harper also had a great game. Everyone was so worked up about the double he didn't get 2 nights ago by watching one out of the box that he thought he had hit out of the yard in the bottom of the 9th inning. Well, guess what? He had, in just absolute, I don't know if you want to call it irony, poetic justice, he was 4 for 5 last night, 3 doubles. Just on second every time. He's like, oh, what? You say I don't hustle? I'm a hustle. I'm going to get out there. 4 for 5. Great work by Bryce Harper as part of the 13-hit effort for the Philadelphia Phillies offense. He had no RBIs. He had no runs scored, which is crazy for a 4 for 5 day. But for all the lack of power that he's been displaying, he's still hitting the cover off the ball. It's just not going out of the yard. He had one. Like, I know I had the CT guarantee Bryce Harper's going to hit a home run in this series. Like, can we count the one that was ruled a home run on the field and was overturned because a fan reached out, apparently? I think that ball might have had a chance to go out. And my gut feeling is it probably would have gone off the railing. But we don't know because the fan reached out and they called it a ground rule double. And I get it, but I just want my prediction to be right. And I want Bryce Harper to have a home run, and maybe that gets him going. But he's come so close. Maybe he'll hit one today. Maybe I'll look like an idiot. I'm going to count that one. You guys can make fun of me in the comments if I'm cheating on the CT guarantee on that. The last thing we need to talk about from this game, we're going to get deeper into this later on in the episode when we talk about the potential playoff rotation for the Philadelphia Phillies starting pitching-wise. Ranger Suarez was not great. 5 1/3 innings pitched. Now, he only gave up 4 earned, and a couple of those came late on in his final inning of work. He only struck out 2, though. He walked 2, and he gave up 12 hits. 12 hits? I mean, 12 hits in 5 1/3 innings. Well, that means the bullpen was probably pretty good because the Phillies only gave up 13 hits in the game. So that means that Ryan Kirkering, Matt Strom, Jose Alvarado, and Tanner Banks got the job done insanely well last night. But Ranger Suarez, if you have concerns about him right now, I understand it. I do get it. I get what's going on with people worrying about, oh, we haven't seen good Ranger for a little bit. His velocity was down. Is he going to be able to come back and be the type of pitcher he was earlier on in the season? I still have faith because he still has time. He's still probably got 3 more starts left in the regular season to work some stuff out. We'll see. I wanted to see him throw 6 innings because I want to see him look like he's starting to get more stretched out. He didn't accomplish that last night. So that is a little troubling. We'll get deeper into the conversation of what that means for the Phillies. And coming up next, you might think, Connor, you went through all of that and you didn't even talk about the benches clearing, Nick Castellanos getting hit, Bryce Harper saying bad words that I can't say on this podcast. Oh, don't worry. We'll talk about Edwin Uceta coming up next and what the Philadelphia Phillies could potentially do in Game 3 or how they should handle it. It's a little bit of a tricky situation, okay? We'll discuss it coming up as we continue Locked On Phillies. But let's talk about GameTime first. GameTime is absolutely awesome. The best way to get tickets. And GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many easier ways to do it on GameTime. Listen to all these perks that they have, all these cool features they have. First and foremost, all-in pricing, so that when you're going to buy your tickets, you see everything up front. You're not getting hit with like last-second fees when you go to check out. No, they show you all of that. They also show you the view from your seat before you purchase, so you know, hey, this is the sight line. This is what view I'm going to have. This is how it's going to look when I get to the concert, comedy, theater, or sports event that you go to. Anything that you can get Game Time tickets for, they'll show you that. And they have the Game Time guarantee, which means if you find a seat in the same row and section for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. And just to make sure you're all good, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. GameTime has it all. And it's not just sports. Remember, comedy, concert, theater, all of that great stuff you need a ticket to go to. GameTime's your place. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. And you download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today because what time is it? It's game time. All right, let's jump into Game 3 of this series with the Tampa Bay Rays, a game that could be highly anticipated if you enjoy the fisticuffs. Yeah, we had a bit of I wouldn't call it a brawl. The bench is cleared, and then there was a lot of yelling and a little bit of shoving, and Bryce Harper got mad, and Nick Castellanos got mad, and ultimately the only guy that left the game was Edwin Uceta, the pitcher who hit Nick Castellanos intentionally in the 8th inning. I would call him more Edwin Upseta because he was clearly just not happy with the fact that his 8th inning was not going the way he planned. You give up the double to Cal Stevenson. You give up the hit to Buddy Kennedy. You give up the home run to Trey Turner, and the next thing you know, it's 9-4, and you think you let your team down. So what do? You hit Nick Castellanos intentionally. Like, here's the thing. I understand people who have been around the game for a while. If you're my age or older, if you're 30 or older, well, I'm 29, but we'll count it. And you saw the early, like the late 90s, the early 2000s, even back to 90s, 80s baseball, when guys used to plunk dudes left and right for anything. You look at a guy the wrong way, they're throwing in your rib cage. You understand that sometimes guys hit guys. Sometimes it's intentional. That's part of the sport, but it's going away more and more. And part of the reason it's going away is because these guys throw harder on average. And you can't have guys out there throwing 98, 99, 100 regularly, just throwing at guys. And we've already had trouble, right? The past couple of years, there have been complaints from batters across baseball about the lack of control by pitchers, whether it's coming from different baseballs or whatever the case may be. Guys don't want to get hit by balls going that fast. And I don't blame them. It is part of the sport, but it's also part of the sport that some players are now trying to take out of it. And the Phillies all said after the game, in response to Nick Castellanos being hit clearly intentionally, no doubt that it was intentional. It's why Uceta was thrown out of the game. They were Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos himself all talked about it. And they basically said, hey, there's no place for that in the game. That's unacceptable. You can't be doing that. You just had a bad inning, and now you're going to take it out by throwing at a guy. Like, that's childish. Nick Castellanos compared it to his 2-year-old complaining when he doesn't get dessert. And I think that's an apt comparison. He's throwing a hissy fit out there on the mound, and he's putting Philadelphia Phillies players at risk. And that's ridiculous. And you should not do that. And even though it's happened in the past. I've never been a huge proponent of like hitting a guy intentionally unless they hit one of your guys and it's in retaliation. And in that case, the Philadelphia Phillies find themselves looking down the barrel of, do they retaliate? There were talks about it last night from, not from the team, but from people on social media, like, hey, do they hit somebody here in the ninth? You have a 9-4 lead. Do you bring in a reliever like Taijuan Walker and just throw at somebody just to get them back? And the Phillies opted not to do that. I'd imagine that today in game 3 of this series, they opt not to do that again. Zach Wheeler's on the mound. You're not wasting a Zach Wheeler start by throwing at somebody. That's stupid. They'll toss him immediately. You need these games. You're not going to do that. The bullpen guys, you're probably not going to do that either. And here's the way I look at it, right? Even though I'm totally on the side of the Phillies, like, bro, that's BS. Why are you throwing at a guy? It's not like anyone disrespected him. It's not like anyone bat flipped. It's not like anyone was talking to him or said anything. He was mad he wasn't performing well, and he decided he was going to try and hurt a player on the other team. And that's Bush League right there. If you deserve to get hit, you'll know it. If you show up a pitcher, hey, you got to deal with the fact that maybe that guy wants to throw at you. If you're chirping at the other team, if you did something dirty where you, like, I don't know, spikes up slide to second base and they want to throw at you, man, that's baseball. That's the way of policing the game. But just you had a bad performance, that's ridiculous. And now the Phillies have to decide if they're going to throw at them. And like I said, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think the bullpen, they're going to do it because you got a bunch of players on the Phillies come out and say, that's not the way we do things. That's not the way you should do things. The Rays should be embarrassed. And they should be for the actions. Now it's one pitcher. I don't think it was an organizational thing. I don't think they told him to hit it, but they should be embarrassed by the actions of Edwin Uceta last night in that game. But here's the way, like, I kind of think about what could go wrong. Like, let's say Wheeler throws 6 shutout and you're up 7-0 and you're beating the Rays and you're like, okay, now's the time. Go out there and just let somebody wear one. Well, here's the deal, right? This is a 0.01% chance of this scenario happening. But let's say they hit somebody and then that guy comes running out and he's going after whatever reliever. Well, then Stubbs has to come out from behind the plate. Then Bryce Harper has to come from over at first base and meet him. Like, you have a bunch of guys now in a fray. Let's say somebody throws a punch. Let's say, like, and it may not even be a Phillies player's fault, but let's say the guy swings on Bryce Harper. And what's Bryce Harper supposed to do? Not defend himself? Next thing you know, you're punching people. It has happened before. It's rare, but it has happened before in baseball. And then Bryce Harper suspended for 3 games against the Mets, and that's the closest team to you in your divisional standings. It's just, it creates a situation where, even though it's not likely, there could be suspensions. If there are suspensions for a team that has something to play for, like the Phillies, that's dumb to do that just to prove a point. It puts you in a bad spot. That's why I'm not throwing at somebody. It's not about being the bigger person. It's about being smarter about where your team's at and knowing that you're a winning team. They're not a winning team. They don't have anything to play for. Don't stoop to their level. This is not the time, right? If it's June, cool. If it's August, September, definitely not. Not doing it while you're in the race for the top seed in the National League, especially when you have so many guys hurt. So that's how I feel on that. Let's talk about the actual game tonight, though, because I feel like everything I've been talking about is, are you throwing at a guy? You have Zach Wheeler on the mound looking for a sweep. How great would it be if the Phillies, after last night and that Bush League crap that the Rays pulled, went out there and Zach Wheeler just absolutely shoved? You're facing Shane Batts on the mound for them. You go out and you see a guy with a 3.27 ERA. Pretty solid year for him so far in 55 innings pitched. He's given up 6 home runs, so you're not really going to beat him with the long ball. History would show you, well, one every like 10 innings or so. So maybe you could get him, but like, you're looking at a guy that doesn't strike out a bunch. The way you're going to have to do is string together hits like you did last night. I know they had 3 home runs in the game, but they also had some big productive innings where they strung together hits, 13 total in the ball game. That's the type of performance I want to see from the Phillies. Hey, wouldn't you guess? Another right-handed pitcher on the mound starting for the Tampa Bay Rays and starting against the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, look at the numbers, folks. The Phillies are minus 205 favorites on the money line. That's moved in their direction since it opened. They're 75.1% favorites on the ESPN analytics meter here. With Zach Wheeler on the mound, you should win this game. Their offense is not that good. Wheeler is dominant. He is in the Cy Young conversation and fully deserves to be. The Phillies should go out and win this game. You've already won the series, though. You've already accomplished what you set out to do. Let's make it hurt a little bit more. This one's personal. You want to throw at us? We're going to sweep you. We might have let you get out of here with 1 win. Save some face. Your pride isn't completely defeated if you're a Tampa Bay Rays player, coach, fan, whatever. But no, that goes out the window. Beat the brakes off this team. Like, just go out there, Zach Wheeler shove. Hopefully Kyle Schwarber plays, maybe another leadoff home run, make it 15, add to the record. But the guy I'm really looking at is Bryce Harper. He's been so close to hitting the ball out of the yard. So darn close, like inches, reviews off the top of the wall. Can he please just get one? Bryce, please just sell out for one. I don't care if you go 1 for 5 tonight and your only hit is a bomb. Find a way to hit the ball out of the yard. That's something that I'm looking for because I need that CT guarantee to come true. I'm also interested if Trey Turner has a little bit of something building here. He's showing off the power in 2 straight, well, not 2 straight at-bats, but 2 at-bats yesterday. Kyle Schwarber, we saw do that and then get hot. Can Trey Turner get hot? Can this team start to show that they're peaking at the right time? It feels like Schwarber is. It feels like Turner's showing signs of life. It feels like Harper's getting close. Okay, we got a little something cooking here. Who are those offensive stars that step up in tonight's game? And how did the call-ups follow up a couple of great performances from Kennedy, Stevenson last night? Do they get that opportunity again, depending on who's available? Well, one of those guys is going to have to play, or Cody Clemens is going to have to play. And if Kyle Schwarber's not there, you'll have to figure something out. This could be one of those weird end-of-series lineups, mainly out of necessity. So other guys are going to have to step up outside of the stars. That's what we're looking for in Game 3 of the series against the Rays. Hopefully I'm wearing this victory shirt again tomorrow, and we're laughing at the Rays for doing something dumb to wake up the Phillies in Game 2 by hitting Nick Castellanos. Maybe Casty has a big day. Maybe he goes out and he goes yard because he's a little bit ticked off about losing his last at bat last night due to a guy just not throwing a good game. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I have another question that I want to ask you before we're done this episode. I'll ask you coming up about the pitching rotation in the playoffs. Who gets the ball in the third game? It's a great question that was asked to me this morning, and I'll give you my thoughts as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Prize Picks first, though. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, unlike other apps. On Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. You're not playing other players or anything. No, there's no special line you have to hit. No, you get the numbers. You pick more than or less than on selected player stats. You put 2 to 6 players in a lineup. It could be the same player, different stats. It takes like a minute tops to put that together, and you could find your way to a good amount of money doing it. Listen to all the stuff going on right now. You got NFL football. Let's roll. Always a great time to look at that. You got college football. Hey, keep an eye on that. MLB coming down. The playoff push is on. You've got a lot of data, over 140 games worth of it for baseball teams right now. You should know who's going to do what. It's a great time to take advantage with Prize Picks. Plus, you download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Not a big math guy. I believe that's 10 times the amount that you're putting up. That's a good deal. And I know good deals. You don't even need to win. I sound like a used car salesman right there. Anyway, you don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's talk about this interesting situation with the playoff rotation. Real quick before we do, I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Sully, Paul Francis Sullivan, does a great job covering baseball in general on that podcast. It's also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, all the places you find Locked On Phillies. Check out Locked On MLB for that big overarching look at baseball. Dodgers lost last night. Braves, not great. Braves won, but still, they're far down. See, this is why you got to do it, because I'm focused on the Phillies. I don't always have time to keep up with every team in baseball. Sully does. He will take care of you. But this conversation about the third starter in the postseason, I think, is an easy one, but it is a fair question. John Kincaid, one of my coworkers on Kincaid and South Tunis over at 97.5 The Fanatic, asked me this. He said, who gets the ball right now in the third game of a playoff series? Obviously, Wheeler throws, Nola throws, but that third spot, is it Sanchez or is it Suarez? Ranger Suarez hasn't looked great lately. Sanchez has been looking really darn good pretty much all year. Sanchez is deserving, but is he the guy that gets the ball? Absolutely not. And I don't even give it a second thought. And it has nothing to do with Christopher Sanchez or his performance or lack of faith in him or anything. What it has to do with is experience. If you can get an experienced pitcher out there on the mound that has been in these spots before, that is a major, major asset for a playoff team. And let's be real, Ranger Suarez has been in these spots before. The past couple of years, the top three arms have been Wheeler, Nola, Ranger Suarez. And because he's been in postseason environments, because he's made big starts, because he's been in a situation similar to the one that he'd be in starting game 3, even if it's like 1-1 in a series and you really need that game as a swing game, like I'm giving the ball to Ranger Suarez, even though he hasn't looked as good as Chris Sanchez recently. It's simply the experience thing. Christopher Sanchez's playoff experience, it was that like one inning of work against the Diamondbacks in the NLCS last year. It's not exact, and that didn't exactly go crazy well. It's not like he K inning over, looks great. Like, no, he was okay. I'm not saying he's not capable, right? I'm not saying if the ball goes to Christopher Sanchez, I say, we're screwed. The season's over. I think he's an extremely capable pitcher, and eventually he's going to get those spots. At some point, if the Phillies advance deep enough, you'll need a fourth starter. It will be Sanchez. It will not just be a 1 innings worth of work. It'll be a true start, and we'll get to see if the kid has what it takes in the postseason. But we already know that answer for Ranger Suarez. We know that for Wheeler. We know that for Nola. Being around the block, having experienced something before, makes you just unbelievably more comfortable in those spots. And I think Christopher Sanchez would be just fine. He has that Ranger Suarez gene in him where he's just like calm all the time. You don't ever see him show emotion. The game never really speeds up on Chris Sanchez. Again, this ain't a Chris Sanchez thing. I think he's very, 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 very good. And right now, all things equal, like let's say neither of them had pitched in the postseason, well, I'd probably give the ball to Sanchez. But that experience is such an important factor. And that's why, to me, it seems to be a simple decision. To some people, it may be the hot hand. But what I'll tell you is, past couple times in the postseason, game 1 starters, Aaron Nola. Like, they go with experience, even though Zach Wheeler is the better overall pitcher, and they roll with that, and it's worked out. The Phillies trust their vets. They trust the guys that have been there before, and that's the situation that you'd be in if you're deciding who the third starter in the playoff rotation is going to be. Now, could it change? Absolutely. If Ranger Suarez looks like this for the next 3 starts and Christopher Sanchez continues to throw well, they might force your hand because it's not just like, remember, Noah Syndergaard had some playoff experience. When the Phillies acquired him from the Angels, he didn't just like bump up to the top of the rotation because he was the guy that had thrown in the postseason before. Remember, that was 2022. Nola hadn't thrown in the postseason before. Wheeler hadn't thrown in the postseason before. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not even considering throwing Noah Syndergaard over them. Experience isn't the only thing that matters, is the point. If it becomes undeniable that Christopher Sanchez is the clearly better pitcher and Ranger Suarez hasn't figured it out and his velocity keeps dropping, well, yeah, then you're in a situation where you're going to have to make a tougher decision. But right now, I think it's a no-brainer that Ranger gets the ball, and hopefully he earns that fully, not just on experience, but on performance the final couple of weeks. I almost said the first couple of weeks, the final couple of weeks of the season. So that's my thoughts. Again, as always, the comments are open on YouTube. Go ahead and leave me thoughts on everything. I go ahead and read through all of them. I don't always get a chance to respond to them, but I check my notifications. I see what you guys are commenting and posting and all of that great stuff. So let me know if I'm off base on that. That's just my thoughts on something that's starting to pop up as we draw closer to October. The hunt for Red October, man, it is red hot right now. And the Phillies, they're putting themselves in darn good position. Can they have the top seed in the National League? Could everything be perfect? And could my projection of 97 wins be spot on or close to spot on for the 3rd straight year? If it is, I'm going to have to pat myself on the back. But we got a ways to go. Right now, I'm just patting the Phillies on the back for handling their business last night, getting over the fact that the Rays pitched like losers and threw at a guy, and getting ready for them to go ahead and hang one on them tonight because of that. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. I really, really appreciate it. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. Honestly, you don't even understand how much it helps me out when someone hits that subscribe button. So if you enjoy the content here on Locked On Phillies, I really hope you do that. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube and you're just listening to my wonderful voice in podcast form, go ahead and check us out on YouTube. And if you like it, hit that subscribe button there. Like, come on. I think it's great in video as well. I'm not all that good looking, but I think it's fun to visually be able to see the expressions and some of the motions I make. So go ahead and check that out too. That's enough lobbying. I appreciate everyone checking us out either way. And tomorrow we're going to be reacting to the Rays series. We got an off day, so we'll take a peek in on the standings and talk about the most likely landing spots for teams around the National League when it comes to playoff seeding. And we'll get ready for a big series with the Mets. Whew. It's a busy time right now for the Phils. The hunt for Red October is officially on. That's all. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.